Captain John Miller stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon, watching the stars through the massive viewscreen. His dark blue uniform was perfectly pressed, his posture straight and alert. After 20 years in space, he still felt a thrill every time they approached a new star system. "Captain, we're receiving the welcome transmission from the Galactic Confederation station," said Communications Officer Diane Foster. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. "They're providing docking instructions now." Miller nodded. "Very good. Helm, follow their approach vector. Lieutenant Wright, prepare the diplomatic team." Lieutenant Susan Wright stood from her tactical station. She was tall, with short blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Yes, sir. The team is already assembled in the shuttle bay." This mission was historic. Humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Confederation after decades of distant observation. Earth had developed faster than light travel only 30 years ago, and in that time, they had explored nearby systems and established a few colonies. But they were newcomers to a galactic community that had existed for thousands of years. Miller felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The future of human expansion depended on this meeting going well. "I'll join the diplomatic team," Miller said. "Commander Rivera, you have the bridge." Commander Rivera, a steady presence with salt and pepper hair, nodded solemnly. "Good luck, Captain." Miller took the elevator down to the shuttle bay where 12 officers in formal dress uniforms waited. Among them was Dr. Kevin Phillips, Earth's leading xenobiologist and the official head of the diplomatic mission. "Nervous, Captain?" Phillips asked with a small smile. "Cautiously optimistic," Miller replied. "Something about this all feels rushed." Phillips shrugged. "They've been watching us for decades. Perhaps they finally decided we're worth talking to." The team boarded the shuttle, and Miller took a seat near the front. As they departed the Horizon, he got his first good look at the Confederation station. It was enormous, at least 5 times the size of Earth's largest space station. Its design resembled a silver snowflake with dozens of docking arms extending from a central hub. "Impressive," Wright whispered from beside him. "Very," Miller agreed. "But notice the weapons emplacements? There are hundreds of them." Wright's eyes narrowed as she scanned the station more carefully. Defensive capability far beyond what they described in their briefing materials. "Keep your eyes open," Miller said quietly. "Something doesn't feel right." The shuttle docked smoothly, and after a brief pressurization sequence, they were greeted by a delegation of aliens. The leader was a Zalaxian, a tall, slender being with pale blue skin, 4 arms, and large dark eyes. He wore flowing robes of silver and blue. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the Zalaxian said through a translation device. "I am Ambassador Zextral. We are honored by your presence." Miller noticed something odd in the ambassador's demeanor, a mixture of deference and what seemed almost like fear. That made no sense. Earth's technology was far behind the Confederation's. They should be viewed as primitive newcomers, not equals to be feared. The human delegation was led through gleaming corridors to a large meeting chamber. Representatives from at least 20 different species sat around a massive circular table. Miller noticed that several seats remained empty. "Were others expected?" Dr. Phillips asked. Ambassador Zexitral's 4 hands made a complicated gesture. "Some delegations expressed concerns about meeting humans directly. They will observe remotely." Miller and Wright exchanged glances. Why would advanced civilizations fear meeting humans? The formal reception began with speeches and introductions. Dr. Phillips presented information about Earth and human culture, while representatives from various alien species explained their roles in the Confederation. Miller was only half listening, his attention drawn to the growing tension in the room. Several of the aliens kept staring at the humans with expressions that his instincts read as fear. He was about to whisper his concerns to Wright when alarms blared throughout the station. "Security breach in Sector 7 through 9, announced a computerized voice in multiple languages. "Hostile boarding in progress." Ambassador Zexitral's blue skin paled to nearly white. "Draconites," he whispered. "The radical faction has Found us. The chamber doors burst open and 7 reptilian warriors charged in. They were massive, covered in scales and armor, with powerful tails and clawed hands that held energy weapons. "Death to the peace talkers," the lead Draconite roared. "And death to the sleeping gods." The aliens around the table scattered in panic. The Draconites raised their weapons, targeting the defenseless diplomats. Without thinking, Miller launched himself across the room. He moved with a speed that surprised even him, tackling one of the Draconite warriors to the ground. The alien was twice his size and weight, yet Miller held him down with unexpected strength. Across the room, Lieutenant Wright had drawn her standard-issue sidearm. With impossible precision, she fired 3 shots in rapid succession, hitting the weapons of 3 different Draconites and causing them to explode. The remaining security forces, a mixture of robotic guards and armed representatives, managed to subdue the rest of the attackers. When the brief but violent skirmish ended, Miller stood up, breathing hard. The room had fallen completely silent. Every alien was staring at the humans with undisguised shock and fear. Ambassador Zexitral approached Miller slowly, his 4 arms held out in what seemed to be a gesture of supplication. "The legends were true," he whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The war gods have awakened." Miller looked at his hands, confused. "What are you talking about?" "We just reacted to the threat." The ambassador trembled. "No human should be able to move that fast or with such strength. Your lieutenant's accuracy defies probability." Dr. Phillips stepped forward. "Ambassador, I assure you we're just normal humans who received standard military training." "No," said another alien representative, a small being with insect-like features. "We have studied your species for decades. What you just displayed exceeds your known physical limitations by at least 3 times. Before Miller could respond, a communication officer rushed into the room. "Ambassador, we're receiving urgent messages from across the Confederation. Word of the incident has already spread." "How is that possible?" Miller asked. "It just happened." "Subspace. Communications," Wright said quietly. "Remember the briefing? Information travels almost instantaneously across their network." The communications officer looked terrified. 7 species have already withdrawn their diplomatic missions to Earth. 12 others are requesting immediate protection agreements. Miller turned to Ambassador Zexitral. "I demand an explanation. Why are we being called war gods? Why is everyone suddenly afraid of us?" The ambassador's large eyes blinked slowly. "Captain Miller, there is much about your own species that you do not know. History that was hidden from you." "What history?" Dr. Phillips demanded. "It is not my place to tell you," Zextral said. "But now that you have revealed yourselves, others will come seeking either your protection or your destruction." He bowed deeply. The balance of power in the galaxy has just shifted dramatically. As Miller and his crew returned to their shuttle, they could feel the stares of hundreds of aliens watching them from every corridor and chamber. Word had spread through the entire station. "Captain," Wright said quietly, "what just happened in there?" Miller shook his head, his mind racing with questions. "I don't know, Lieutenant. But I think we just broke something very important without even knowing what it was." As the shuttle departed for the horizon, Miller looked back at the massive station. He couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just stepped onto a much larger stage than they had ever imagined, and that they were somehow expected to know their lines in a play they'd never rehearsed. Dr. Alice Bennett brushed red dust from her knees as she stood up in the Martian cave. The beam from her headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating the strange markings on the wall. She had been working in this cave system for 3 weeks, but only today had her team broken through to this hidden chamber. "Sam, come look at this," she called to her research assistant. Sam Wilson hurried over, his eyes widening as the light revealed the cave wall. "Are those hieroglyphs?" Alice nodded, her heart racing with excitement. The wall was covered with symbols and images that clearly showed intelligent design. Most striking were the figures of bipedal beings, humans, standing tall with raised arms. From their hands came jagged lines representing fire or lightning. Around them lay the forms of monstrous creatures. This changes everything, Alice whispered. These markings are deep under the Martian surface. They must be thousands of years old. But that's impossible, Sam said. Humans weren't on Mars thousands of years ago. Alice carefully photographed every inch of the wall. Exactly. So either these weren't made by humans, or our history books are wrong, Sam finished. While Alice made her discovery on Mars, Admiral Frank Rodriguez sat in a windowless room at Earth Alliance headquarters in Geneva. The gray-haired officer listened intently as Intelligence Officer Maya Lee presented her findings. These intercepted communications began flowing immediately. After the incident at the Confederation station, Maya explained, pointing to the screen. We've translated about 60% so far. And? Rodriguez asked. They're all discussing the same thing, sir. They're calling humans the Terran war deities and talking about our return. Maya looked uncomfortable. Most disturbing are the references to something called the First Great Purge. Rodriguez frowned. The First Great Purge? What does that mean? We don't know, sir. There's no event in human history that matches these descriptions. According to these messages, humans once controlled vast regions of space and were feared as unstoppable warriors. Maya paused. Some of these communications date the first purge to approximately 25,000 Earth years ago. That's ridiculous, Rodriguez said. Human civilization as we know it was barely beginning 10,000 years ago. Yes, sir. But the Confederation species seem convinced of this history. Rodriguez rubbed his temples. What about the reports of unusual abilities? Have we confirmed what happened with Captain Miller and Lieutenant Wright? Maya nodded. We've reviewed the station's security footage. Both Miller and Wright displayed physical capabilities well beyond normal human limits. And sir, they're not the only ones. She showed him new reports coming in from Earth Alliance outposts. A Marine lifting a fallen beam that should have required heavy machinery. A pilot surviving a crash that should have been fatal. A doctor working for 72 hours straight without rest. It's like something is waking up inside us, Maya said quietly. Millions of kilometers away on the mining colony of Ceres, engineer Olivia Parker was trying to fix a damaged power conduit. The cramped maintenance shaft made the work difficult, and she cursed as her hand slipped, cutting her palm on a sharp edge of metal. Damn it, she muttered, watching blood drip from her hand. The droplets fell onto the strange metal object her team had discovered embedded in the asteroid last week. They had assumed it was a natural formation, but when her blood touched its surface, the object began to glow. Olivia jumped back as the device projected a three-dimensional image in the air. The hologram showed armored figures that were clearly human in form. They moved with impossible speed and strength, decimating entire fleets of ships that Olivia didn't recognize. At the bottom of the projection was a date marker and an alien script. The translation software in Olivia's tablet processed it. Campaign against the Void Eaters, year 93,427, approximate 25,000 Earth Standard years ago. Olivia stared in disbelief. The hologram showed humans, or beings that looked exactly like humans, fighting. An interstellar war thousands of years before humans had even developed agriculture on Earth. Back on Earth, Admiral Rodriguez had made his decision. Assemble a team, he told Maya. I want Captain Miller, Dr. Bennett from the Mars expedition, and our best scientists. There's an abandoned alien outpost near Proxima Centauri that our scouts found last year. If there are answers about our past, we might find them there. 3. Days later, the Earth Alliance vessel Intrepid departed Earth orbit with Captain Miller in command. Dr. Bennett had been rushed back from Mars with her findings, and a team of specialists filled the key positions on the ship. The coordinates are set for the Proxima Centauri system, reported navigator Paul Chen. Estimated travel time is 6 days at maximum FTL. Miller nodded from the captain's chair. He had barely slept since the incident at the Confederation station. Strange dreams plagued him whenever he closed his eyes. Dreams of battles among the stars, of power flowing through his body. Dr. Bennett, he said, turning to the archaeologist who stood nearby. Tell me more about these cave markings you found. Alice pulled up images on the main screen. The hieroglyphs show human-like figures using powers against monstrous enemies. Carbon dating puts them at over 15,000 years old. Lieutenant Wright, who had insisted on joining the mission, studied the images. Those creatures look like the Void Eaters mentioned in the hologram that Engineer Parker found on Ceres. There's something else, Alice added. I found this repeated symbol that our translation AI identifies as meaning guardians or protectors. It's always associated with the human figures. Miller frowned. Not conquerors, but protectors? That's what it suggests, Alice confirmed. But protectors of what? And why don't we remember any of this? The ship's AI interrupted them. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Rodriguez reports that 17 more incidents of enhanced human abilities have been recorded in the past 24 hours. The Galactic Confederation has issued a formal request for humans to remain within our current territory until, quote, the awakening situation can be properly assessed. A chill ran down Miller's spine. They're afraid of us, he said quietly. And the worst part is I'm starting to think they might be right to be. The Intrepid continued its journey toward Proxima Centauri, carrying a crew searching for the truth about their own species. None of them could have imagined what they would find there. Evidence that humanity wasn't uplifted by aliens, we were exiled by them. Or perhaps even more disturbing, we had exiled ourselves. The Earth Alliance vessel, Intrepid, emerged from faster-than-light travel near Proxima Centauri, with a slight shudder. On the bridge, Captain Miller watched as the abandoned alien outpost came into view on the main screen. It was built into the side of a small moon, its dark metal surface reflecting little of the distant sun's light. Scan for life signs or active power signatures, Miller ordered. Lieutenant Wright ran the scans from her tactical station. No life signs detected, Captain. Minimal power readings, possibly emergency systems only. Prepare a landing party, Miller said. Dr. Bennett, Dr. Davis, Security Officer Martinez, and myself, Lieutenant Wright, you have the bridge. Dr. Patricia Davis, the team's geneticist, checked her equipment one last time before boarding the shuttle. She was a serious woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her specialty was evolutionary biology and genetic analysis, and Admiral Rodriguez had specifically requested her for this mission. Security Officer Greg Martinez loaded his weapon and secured extra power cells to his belt. The young officer had joined Earth Space Forces only 2 years ago, but his combat scores were off the charts. The shuttle departed the Intrepid and approached the alien structure. Up close, they could see that the outpost was much older than they had initially thought. Parts of it were damaged with scorch marks suggesting some ancient battle. That entrance looks accessible, Dr. Bennett pointed to a large doorway. The architecture matches some elements I saw in the Mars cave glyphs. The shuttle landed on a flat platform near the entrance. After confirming their environment suits were sealed properly, the team exited into the thin atmosphere of the moon. Gravity is about 60% of Earth standard, Martinez noted as they moved toward the entrance. Makes movement easier, but watch your steps. The massive doors were partially open, allowing them entry into a dark corridor. Their suit lights illuminated the way as they moved deeper into the facility. The walls were covered with the same type of symbols Dr. Bennett had found on Mars. I'm recording everything, she said excitedly. These are definitely the same language patterns. They reached a large central chamber where emergency lighting still functioned, casting a dim blue glow over the room. The space was filled with equipment covered in dust, and along one wall stood dozens of cylindrical containers. Dr. Davis approached one of the containers and wiped away the dust from its surface. She gasped. These are stasis chambers for biological samples, she said. And this one contains human DNA. Miller joined her. Are you certain? The labeling is clear and my scanner confirms it, Davis replied. Captain, these samples are ancient. The dating system suggests they're at least 50,000 years old. That's impossible, Miller said. Humans as we know them weren't even fully evolved 50,000 years ago. Davis continued her analysis, moving from container to container. These aren't just random samples. They're organized chronologically, showing what appears to be deliberate genetic modification over thousands of years. Dr. Bennett called from across the room. I found a data terminal that still has power, if we can interface with it. Martinez helped her connect their translation device to the alien terminal. After several minutes of work, the screen flickered to life, displaying text and diagrams. It's a research log, Bennett translated slowly. They were studying human genetics, tracking changes to something called the warrior gene complex. Davis looked up sharply. The warrior gene? That's a real genetic marker in humans. It's associated with aggression and combat readiness. Bennett continued reading. According to this, humans once had a much more advanced version of this gene complex. It allowed for enhanced strength, speed, accelerated healing, and something translated as energy manipulation. Like the powers shown in the Mars glyphs, Miller said. Yes, Bennett nodded. But this log says the genes were deliberately suppressed through a program of selective modification. They engineered humans to forget their true abilities. While they were examining the terminal, Martinez wandered toward another section of the facility. He noticed a door that was slightly ajar and pushed it open. Inside was what looked like a weapons testing range. Curious, he stepped in for a closer look. The floor was unstable, and a section collapsed under his weight. Martinez fell, striking, his head against a metal beam. His helmet cracked and blood trickled down his forehead. Martinez, Miller shouted, rushing to the security officer's side. Davis, get over here. Dr. Davis hurried to assess Martinez's injury. The cut isn't deep, but we need to seal his helmet. As they worked to help him, something strange began to happen. Martinez's breathing became rapid, his heart rate spiked, and his skin grew hot to the touch. What's happening to him? Miller asked, concerned. Davis scanned Martinez with her medical device. His adrenaline levels are off the charts. It's triggering some kind of reaction in his cellular structure. Before their eyes, the cut on Martinez's forehead began to seal itself. His muscles tensed and seemed to grow more defined. When he opened his eyes, they glowed with an inner light. With one fluid motion, Martinez stood up, lifting a piece of fallen debris that weighed at least 300 pounds, and tossing it aside as if it were nothing. Martinez? Miller said, cautiously. Are you all right? The security officer looked at his hands in wonder. I feel different, stronger, like I've been sleeping my whole life and just woke up. The glow in his eyes faded after a few minutes, and though he remained stronger than before, the extreme enhancement seemed to diminish. The adrenaline spike must have temporarily deactivated the genetic suppressions, Dr. Davis theorized. The injury and danger triggered something dormant in his DNA. Martinez looked at her. You mean this is what humans are really capable of? I need to get blood samples back to my lab, Davis said. But based on what we're seeing here, yes, humans were engineered to forget their true nature. Back on Earth, similar awakenings had begun occurring worldwide. A firefighter lifted a collapsed beam to save a trapped child. A police officer moved with impossible speed to pull pedestrians from the path of a runaway vehicle. A doctor worked for 3 days straight without rest to save victims of a natural disaster. Each incident was triggered by stress, danger, or injury, situations where adrenaline flooded the body. In his office at Earth Alliance headquarters, Admiral Rodriguez received reports of each new case with growing concern. The Galactic Confederation had sent a formal message: control these manifestations or face quarantine. What they didn't share was their true fear, that humanity might fully remember its past as the galaxy's most feared warriors, engineered millennia, ago by the now extinct progenitors, to win a war against entities from another dimension that consumed entire planets. The Earth Alliance established containment protocols, but videos of ordinary people performing extraordinary feats had already leaked to the public. Speculation and fear spread rapidly. On the intrepid, Miller and his team prepared to return with their findings. As they boarded their shuttle, Dr. Bennett looked back at the ancient facility. We were never the newcomers, she said quietly. We're the ones who came back. Captain Miller stood before the Earth Alliance Council, his uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident on his face. The council chamber was filled with military leaders and government officials, all anxious to hear his report on the Proxima. Centauri findings. The evidence is clear, Miller said. Humans were not always limited to our current physical capabilities. The genetic research facility we found contains proof that our ancestors possessed enhanced strength, speed, healing, and other abilities that were deliberately suppressed. Admiral Rodriguez nodded grimly. And these awakenings are increasing. Over 200 documented cases in the past week alone. The room erupted in worried conversations until Rodriguez raised his hand for silence. The Galactic Confederation has issued an ultimatum, he continued. Control these manifestations, or face quarantine. They've positioned a fleet at the edge of our solar system as a show of force. They're afraid of us, Miller said, but from what we've learned, they have reason to be. According to the records Dr. Bennett translated, humans were created as warriors by a species called the progenitors to fight in an ancient war. Dr. Bennett stepped forward, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. The war was against entities called the Void Eaters, beings from another dimension that consumed entire planets. The progenitors created humans as the ultimate soldiers. So why did they shut us down? Asked Defense Minister Clark. Dr. Davis answered, the war ended. The Void Eaters were pushed back to their dimension. But then the progenitors faced a new problem. What to do with a species of super soldiers who no longer had an enemy to fight? Miller looked around the room. Rather than destroy us, they modified our genetics to suppress our abilities and placed us on Earth with limited technology. They essentially hit the reset button on human civilization. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. What about the progenitors? Someone asked. Where are they now? Extinct, Dr. Bennett replied. According to the records, they died out approximately 30,000 years ago, but they left behind guardians, automated systems designed to monitor humanity and ensure the genetic suppressions remained in place. And those systems are failing, Dr. Davis added, either by design or decay over time. Admiral Rodriguez stood. The question now is, how do we respond to the Confederation's ultimatum? If these awakenings continue, and our scientists believe they will, conflict seems inevitable. Miller took a deep breath. I have a plan, Admiral. It's risky, but it might be our only chance for peace. 3 days later, Miller sat in Dr. Davis's laboratory as she prepared him for a controlled awakening procedure. You understand the risks? She asked, preparing an injection. Once we trigger this, we don't know if we can reverse it. Miller nodded. If I'm going to represent humanity to the Confederation Council, I need to understand what we're truly capable of. And they need to see that awakened humans can control these abilities. Dr. Bennett watched nervously from across the room. She had spent the past days deciphering more of the Mars hieroglyphs and had made a critical discovery. I still think you should hear what I found before you do this, she said. Tell me, Miller replied as Davis prepared the equipment. The Mars glyphs don't portray humans as mindless berserkers, Bennett explained. They show them as guardians, created to protect younger species until they could defend themselves. The texts suggest we weren't just warriors. We were protectors. Miller smiled. That gives me even more reason to go through with this. If that's our true nature, the Confederation needs to know. Davis injected him with a compound designed to trigger the dormant genes while bypassing the built-in suppressors. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Miller gasped as energy surged through his body. His muscles tensed, his senses sharpened, and for a brief moment his eyes glowed with the same inner light they had seen in Martinez. When it was over, Miller felt different, stronger, faster, more aware. But he was still himself, still in control. How do you feel? Davis asked, scanning him with her instruments. Like I've been seeing the world through a fog my whole life, Miller said. And now the fog has lifted. 2 weeks later, Miller stood before the Confederation Council on neutral territory, an ancient space station older than any known civilization. Representatives from 37 species watched him warily. Humans have begun to remember what we once were, Miller told them. But that doesn't mean we must become what you fear. Elder Ambassador Zexitral of the Zelaxians spoke. Your kind were created as weapons of war. History tells us that when the war gods walked the stars, entire species trembled. We were created for war, Miller acknowledged. But we have evolved, beyond our original purpose. The Mars hieroglyphs show that humans served as protectors for younger species, not conquerors. Before the council could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. A faction of Draconites, the same species that had attacked during the first diplomatic meeting, had infiltrated the station with dozens of warriors. "Death to the peace talkers," their leader roared. "The war gods must never rise again." Chaos erupted as council members fled and security forces engaged the attackers. Miller activated his communicator. "Security team, move in," he ordered. Miller and his small team of 5 humans, all having undergone controlled awakenings, moved into action. What followed became legend across 1,000 worlds. Miller moved with impossible speed, disarming 3 Draconite warriors in seconds. Officer Martinez leaped 15 meters straight up to reach attackers on a higher level. Dr. Bennett, who had insisted on joining despite her lack of combat training, found she could sense the location of hidden enemies through walls. Yet what impressed the watching council members most was not the humans' power, but their restraint. Not a single Draconite was killed. Not one civilian was harmed. When the last attacker was subdued, Miller stood in the center of the council chamber, barely breathing hard. "We could have killed them all," he said simply. "We chose not to." Elder Ambassador Kala of the Artarian Collective, the oldest known species in the Confederation, approached Miller slowly. "I was there at the end of the Great Void War," the ancient being said in a voice like rustling leaves. "I knew the truth that was hidden from your kind." The room fell silent as Kayla continued. "The progenitors didn't exile humanity," Kayla revealed. "Your ancestors chose isolation. After the war, they saw how their power frightened other species. They volunteered to seal away their abilities until the galaxy would need protectors again." Miller stared at the ancient ambassador. "We chose this?" "The genetic locks were meant to be temporary," Kayla confirmed. "A way for human culture to evolve without being defined solely by war. You were to awaken when needed again." "And now we're needed?" Miller asked. Kayla gestured to the captured Draconites. "The void stirs once more, Captain Miller. The ancient enemy never truly left, and the galaxy will need its guardians again." As Miller processed this revelation, his communicator chirped with an urgent message from Earth. The awakenings had accelerated dramatically. Thousands of humans worldwide were beginning to access abilities dormant for millennia. The time of hiding was over. Humanity was remembering its purpose. 6 months after the revelation at the Confederation Council meeting, Earth had changed in ways few could have imagined. The genetic suppressions had been safely removed from millions of volunteers worldwide, revealing abilities that varied from person to person. Some developed enhanced strength and reflexes. Others found they could heal injuries with remarkable speed, and a rare few discovered they could sense emotions or even manipulate energy. Admiral Miller, recently promoted from captain, stood at the window of his office in the new Guardian Corps headquarters in Geneva. The building had been constructed in just 3 months by awakened humans working together, a testament to their new capabilities. "The latest reports from the training centers, Admiral," said Lieutenant Wright, now Captain Wright, as she entered his office. Miller turned from the window. "How are the new recruits progressing?" "Exceptionally well," Wright replied. "The abilities seem to manifest based on personality and natural tendencies. Those with protective instincts develop defensive powers, while those with nurturing personalities often show healing abilities." Miller nodded. "And what about the more destructive capabilities, the energy manipulation we saw in the ancient records?" Wright's expression grew serious. "Dr. Davis's research confirms our theory. The most powerful offensive abilities remain locked behind additional genetic barriers. They can only be accessed by individuals who achieve a certain level of psychological balance and ethical maturity. The progenitor's final safeguard," Miller said with a smile. "They ensured that only those who could handle the responsibility would access the full extent of human potential." On the other side of the city, Dr. Bennett and Dr. Davis had established an academy to help humans understand their newly awakened heritage. The campus was filled with people of all ages learning to control and harness their abilities. In one training room, Dr. Davis observed as a young woman named Olivia Parker, the same engineer who had discovered the hologram device on Ceres, practiced, healing a small cut on a volunteer's arm. Her hands glowed softly as the wound closed without leaving a scar. "Remarkable progress, Olivia," Davis said. "Your control has improved significantly." Olivia smiled. "It feels natural now, like I've always known how to do this but just forgot for a while." In another part of the academy, Dr. Bennett taught a class about human history, sharing the discoveries from Mars and Proxima Centauri. The progenitors created us as warriors, she explained to her attentive students, but we evolved to become guardians. The genetic memory tests we've developed show that many of you carry fragmented memories of this past, which is why the abilities feel familiar once you access them. The integration of these abilities into everyday life had transformed human society. Awakened humans use their enhanced strength and endurance to rebuild infrastructure destroyed in natural disasters. Those with healing abilities revolutionized medicine. People with heightened senses and intellect made breakthroughs in science and technology. Yet not everyone welcomed the change. Some religious groups viewed the awakenings as unnatural or even demonic. Others feared that humanity would become divided between the awakened and those who chose to remain as they were. To address these concerns, the Earth Alliance had established strict laws. No one could be forced to undergo awakening. Awakened abilities could not be used to harm others or for personal gain at others' expense. Those who violated these laws faced severe consequences, including having their abilities suppressed once more. In orbit above Earth, the newly commissioned Guardian Corps flagship Protector prepared for its first official mission. Admiral Miller had personally selected the crew from among the most stable and ethical of the awakened humans. "All systems ready for departure, Admiral," reported Navigator Chen from his console on the bridge. "Thank you, Navigator," Miller replied. "Our mission is straightforward but vital. The centuries-long war between the Vex hegemony and the Spiral Collective has destabilized an entire sector. Millions of innocent lives are caught in the crossfire." The crew listened intently as Miller continued. "The Confederation has asked for our intervention, the first time humanity has been invited to act as peacekeepers since our awakening. We will not disappoint them." The Protector engaged its engines, accelerating away from Earth and then jumping to faster-than-light travel. Inside his quarters, Miller reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. From being newcomers to galactic society, humans had emerged as its most powerful members. Yet they had chosen to use that power not for conquest, but for protection. 3 days later, the Protector emerged in the contested star system. Two massive fleets faced each other, the crystalline ships of the Vex hegemony and the spiral-shaped vessels of their enemies. Both sides detected the human ship and immediately redirected their weapons. They had heard stories of the awakened, war gods, but had dismissed them as exaggerations. Miller opened a communication channel to both fleets. "This is Admiral John Miller of the Earth Alliance Guardian Corps. We are here at the request of the Galactic Confederation to end this conflict." The Vex commander responded with scorn. "One ship? The Confederation sends one ship to stop a war that has raged for 3 centuries? Leave now, human, or be destroyed." Miller nodded to Captain Wright. "Implement Operation Peacemaker." Wright pressed a series of commands on her console. Throughout the Protector, awakened humans activated their abilities, channeling them through the ship's specialized systems. A wave of energy spread outward, washing over both fleets. Ship after ship reported the same thing: weapon systems offline, engines functioning at minimal capacity. Neither fleet could fight or flee. "We were created for war," Miller broadcast to the stunned alien commanders. "But we choose to fight for peace. Your weapons have been temporarily disabled. Your representatives will board the neutral station in this system to begin peace negotiations under Confederation supervision." He paused, then added, "If you refuse, we will leave your ships as they are and depart. The choice is yours." Both commanders, faced with the undeniable demonstration of human power, agreed to the talks. Back on Earth, Dr. Bennett and Dr. Davis had made another breakthrough in their research. The genetic locks that kept the most destructive human abilities suppressed were not just safety measures, they were also protection against corruption from the void, the dimension from which the ancient enemy had come. The progenitors were brilliant, Davis told her colleague. They didn't just create warriors, they created beings who could resist the influence of the void while fighting it. Bennett nodded. And they ensured that only those with the strongest ethical foundations could access the full range of abilities. It wasn't just about power, it was about wisdom. On a planet devastated by the Vex Spiral War, Captain Wright led a team of Guardian Corps members with healing and construction abilities. They moved through shattered cities, rescuing survivors and beginning the rebuilding process. As Wright used her enhanced strength to lift a collapsed building section, allowing trapped civilians to escape, a group of local children watched in awe. One small child with blue skin and 4 arms approached her cautiously. "Are you gods?" the child asked in their native language, which Wright's neural implant translated. Wright knelt to meet the child's eyes. "No," she answered with a gentle smile. "We're human. And now, finally, we know what that means." The child looked confused. "What does it mean?" Wright looked at her team members working to save lives and rebuild homes, then back to the child. "It means we protect those who need protection. We help those who need help. And we remember that with great power comes great responsibility." As the sun set on the devastated but now hopeful world, news spread throughout the galaxy. The war gods had returned not as conquerors but as the guardians they were always meant to be,